The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Yesterday, we talked about the 25 people that were killed in the fires and explosions and riots and protests in Independence Square in Kiev, Ukraine. Incredibly, I woke up this morning and thought I was seeing recycled headlines, but no, 22 more people have been found dead as a so-called truce has obviously failed. That makes at least 50 people now total who have died this week in the different clashes in Kiev. That's as reported by the Associated Press. And this has been after we had the protests start several months ago. And then it seemed like things were calming down and going in the direction of some kind of a compromise. And then this happens and it's a complete reversal. And President Viktor Yanukovych and the opposition leaders who are demanding his resignation are locked in really, now it's a month-long protest, but it's really a year after year after year battle over the identity of Ukraine. Is Ukraine going in the direction of more influence from Russia and Vladimir Putin, or are they going more in the direction of the European Union and Western Europe? The protests are primarily from individuals who want a closer alignment with the EU rather than with Russia. And we are seeing urban street battles. We are seeing bodies laid out on the streets around these encampments in central Kiev. And late yesterday, Yanukovych met with opposition leaders and they called for a truce and a new round of negotiations. The truce call had zero credibility. The hardcore protesters did not change what they were doing at all. One protest camp commander told the AP that even after the truce call, protesters continued throwing firebombs at riot police. When you throw firebombs at riot police in Eastern Europe, you're probably not going to have a good time.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. Things are getting crazy here, but I can understand if I were living in the Ukraine and my government was trying to decide between being buddy-buddy with Russia or joining what I would consider to be the clear and obvious choice of joining the European Union.
And again, it's not joining the EU, but just a closer trade alignment.
It could end in becoming a part of Europe.
It could.
Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious which direction I would head in there, and I would be angry about it if my leaders wanted to just be buddy-buddy with Putin.
Well, we've received a lot of emails about this. And yes, most of the emails we receive agree with Lewis that Ukraine would be much better off aligning more closely with the EU than with Russia. But along the lines of reactions in general to Kiev and to Venezuela, which we'll talk about in a second, one reaction has been, well, listen, this is only happening in countries like Ukraine and Venezuela because they're less civilized. The people have less to lose by protesting in the streets, so they protest like this, and this is actually a bad thing. Another view is actually, David, this is happening because the people in these countries are far more engaged politically and socially with what's going on in the country, and the increased awareness is leading to people being more willing to hit the streets. Too many people in the U.S. aren't willing to really protest like this because they don't even know what is going on. Two very different views as to what is behind the willingness to activate like this. And we won't comment on it today. I'm going to wait to hear from some more of our audience, and then we'll discuss that. I think it's an interesting, very opposing views from many members of our audience. In Venezuela, the situation also continues to escalate. A Venezuelan priest was shot. The death toll now is at a minimum at 6. Let's take a look at a little bit of video from Venezuela here. So the regional police of Maracaibo have been shooting unarmed citizens, allegedly, during protests in Venezuela. Now 6 or more dead, as I mentioned. The violence is continuing with fire, tear gas, rubber bullets. The escalation is continuing, and a lot of this stems from the arrest of opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez. National Guard tanks are in the streets. Troops and armed supporters on motorbikes are moving into the capital city on the orders of the president, Nicolas Maduro, who is he vowed to quell what he's calling a coup instigated by Lopez and supporters and supposedly supported by the United States. The U.S. is denying any involvement. The U.S. may not have any formal involvement, but as we know, groups like Cato and Canvas have been very interested in the past in fomenting an anti-socialist revolution in Venezuela. However, I can't state this enough. We cannot fall into the trap of saying the opposition is right-wing, period. If you look at the videos that have been coming out, mostly on Spanish language media, but some of it has been making its way onto English language media as well, many of the students that are protesting in the streets are not right-wingers. They are simply against this administration because of the inflation, because of the lack of security, because of the lack of access to basic goods like milk and sugar and toilet paper in some cases. So we have to keep analyzing this along the lines of a broad opposition and broad interests that are interested in maintaining the current regime there. And the real question is, how long is this going to go and what will be the ultimate result? Is it going to lead to further escalations of violence? Will other countries need to get more formally involved? Will there be some kind of a natural ebb and flow that ultimately leads to a more calm situation? I really don't know at this point.
Right. Well, if people are already getting shot, if unarmed protesters are already getting shot and killed, people need to make a decision. Either more people join and eventually there is what we would call a revolution, or people stop because they know there's going to be a lot of shooting and death.
If it eventually comes to a so-called revolution, or what could be labeled in some kind of sense a revolution, and this is completely hypothetical at this point, it is of absolute importance that right-wing American forces do not go in and take control of the situation. And by take control, I don't mean overtly, where we're reading in the New York Times that the Cato Institute is now running Venezuela. That's not what I mean. I mean something much more under the radar. It's of key importance that that not happen. And we're already thinking several steps ahead, and we're really not even ready to analyze that in detail.
No, but it's important to think about because, I mean, considering its location, there might be some interest there.
Some Scott Walker campaign racist emails have leaked. There's a 2010 email exchange between 2 employees of Wisconsin Republican Governor Scott Walker, who and then the Milwaukee County executive, and they include a racist, homophobic, anti-Semitic chain message laying out a so-called nightmare scenario where somebody would wake up black, Jewish, disabled, and gay with a Mexican boyfriend. The email reads, "In the nightmare, I'm a homosexual, and on top of that, with a Mexican boyfriend. Oh my God, black, Jewish, disabled, gay, with a Mexican boyfriend, drug addict, and HIV positive. Say it isn't so. I can handle being a black, disabled, one-armed, drug-addicted, Jewish homosexual on a pacemaker who's HIV positive, bald, orphaned, unemployed, lives in a slum, and has a Mexican boyfriend. But please, oh dear God, please don't tell me I'm a Democrat." Wow, really hilarious stuff. Hilarious chain message. The correspondence was from Thomas Nardelli, who was then Scott Walker's chief of staff, to his deputy Kelly Rindfleisch, who was revealed, these messages were revealed by Democratic research group American Bridge 21st Century on Wednesday, after a court of appeals in Wisconsin released 27,000 pages of emails and documents. And this is part of that John Doe investigation, which is, according to several sources, all about Scott Walker campaign finance issues and related possible campaign violations. And in addition to Rindfleisch, The email was sent to an undisclosed recipient. Your guess as to who that might be. There's also a different 2010 email exchange which was released. This one was between Scott Walker himself and Nardelli, and that one talks about possibly firing a doctor at the Milwaukee County Behavioral Health Division after officials learned that she formerly worked as a thong model. And Nardelli wrote to Walker, "It isn't pornographic, but it is quite suggestive." And Scott Walker wrote back, "Get rid of the doctor as soon as possible." Lewis, I am shocked, truly shocked, that there could be open and blatant racism, sexism, and homophobia in a Republican state campaign. I just can't believe it.
See, I can, David. This is about as surprising as the sun coming up today. I mean, I would have guessed that this was happening even without having confirmation of it.
Lewis, maybe it's actually us progressives who are racist because we see racism in this, and that's actually our problem.
Right. I guess this is just buddies just joshing around, huh?
Glenn Beck is saying he is done with America. He is considering burning the American flag. Whatever America once stood for and once represented, Glenn Beck said on his radio program that it is all over. He doesn't even really care anymore if people burn Washington, D.C. down and all of the monuments to the ground. And he is actually thinking of burning the flag himself. Take a look at this.
I don't really care. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not about the buildings. I'm not about the flag. I'll burn the flag every day. In fact, I'm really considering burning the flag. I may do a show really super soon where I burn the flag. And if you don't like it, then maybe you should figure out what the flag means. What does it mean? I will tell you what I will not burn, and that is the Constitution. I won't burn the Constitution. I will hold dear to that Constitution. I will share that Constitution. I will uphold it in every way I possibly can by defending it, by standing up for it, by speaking out for it, by protecting it with my own body if need be, but I'll burn the flag every day of the week.
These are the rantings of a madman, quite clearly. They are structured. One of the interesting things about cult teachings, often religious teachings, often indoctrination type materials, is that they are vague enough to mean nothing, but at the same time mean anything that those who are listening to these messages want to hear. This is actually a very common thing. What is Glenn Beck really saying when he says this? Who really knows? It sounds like the rantings of a madman, but they are just vague enough that Glenn Beck's followers could take this message as anything they want.
Right. It's vague. It's kind of his usual fear-mongering. And I don't know. It's captivating, I guess, if anything.
It's very weird, and it's always them. Who is this them that Glenn Beck is always worried about that's going to do all sorts of stuff that he's always preaching? We're always very close. We're always somewhere between 1 and 2 years away from whatever it is that's being predicted, yet it never seems to actually happen.
Yeah, they are always watching. They are always trying to change us. They killed Kenny. You know, it's that type of thing.
Yeah, very, very good. It's always, we never know exactly when, but it's very, very close. And if it doesn't happen, there's always an explanation that's perfectly viable. Either it was a misinterpretation of the biblical texts that told us when the apocalypse was happening, we miscalculated, we didn't carry the zero, my protractor was cracked and I was off by a few degrees in my calculation. There's always a very reasonable, sober explanation after the fact. Let's take a break. We've got a lot happening today, including, does anyone care about Olympic medal counts and who has the most medals right now? Back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our membership program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. If you're worried about liberal bias in statistics, facts, other reality-based things, Find out about unskewing reality at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Terry Eddings. Terry, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. You can join Terry and get a long list of member benefits, any number of them really, at davidpakman.com/membership. This is the final weekend for the Indiegogo campaign. We're doing a campaign to raise money to expand the program to 5 shows per week. We depend on our audience to be funded. If you don't like the fact that we sometimes raise money, I ask you this question. Would you rather us be beholden to big corporations rather than to the audience that actually watches and listens to the show? I think we all know the answer to that, Lewis. So please consider getting those last contributions in. Go to davidpakman.com. The Indiegogo banner is at the top of the page. And we're very, very close in this campaign alone in February to already surpassing the total fundraising of 2013 across multiple campaigns, which would mean, ladies and gentlemen, that if we raise about another $3,000, $3,500 by Monday at midnight, we will not do another fundraiser this year. We have 10 months fundraiser free, which I think a lot of people will like. So go to davidpakman.com, click on the blue Indiegogo banner, and get those contributions in. I was looking at the list of Olympic medals, and I'm not totally sure that our audience cares at all about Olympic medal counts right now. This used to be like a huge source of pride, and in past Olympics, I would get many more emails about, oh, the U.S. has this number of medals, but per capita, it's only this, but here's where we rank there. Right now, Norway with 10 gold medals is leading, followed by Germany with 8, the U.S. with 7, and Russia, Netherlands, and Switzerland tied with 6. If we look at total medals, the U.S. is ahead, 23 medals. Russia and Netherlands have 22. Norway has 21, Canada 18, and Germany 16. I'm just not sure whether people really care about the medals at all. And really, our audience is not that interested in the Olympics at all this time around. We had a poll up on our website. 12% of our audience says they care about the Olympics a lot. 14% say they only care a little bit this time around. 43% said no because they just don't care about the Olympics at all. And then another 23% say that they aren't watching specifically because they're boycotting Russia. Are you surprised by these numbers, Lewis? How much do you care about the medal counts?
Don't care at all. The vast majority of the time, the countries with the most participants are winning the most medals. And statistically, of course, that makes perfect sense. Here, okay, it's a little bit different. It's the Winter Olympics. And yeah, you have some countries with perhaps fewer participants doing really well. There are countries that are in the north and have a lot of people who partake in winter sports. But yeah, overall, I really don't care.
Let me ask you this. When you do watch the Olympics, does your country, whatever your country is, does the number of medals your country wins affect how much you enjoy watching?
No. Usually, I'm only watching for just, I don't know, incredible feats of athleticism and things of that nature. So I really don't care who wins. I just like to be impressed by people doing incredible things.
If you want to talk about incredible feats happening at the Sochi Olympics, the Performance Art Collective, involving a loose membership of feminists known as Pussy Riot, have been whipped by police while attempting to do a very quick performance, and some of them continued doing the performance. We have video of this. The group initially gained international attention back in 2012 after barging into Moscow's main cathedral and performing a punk prayer in which they entreated the Virgin Mary to save Russia from Vladimir Putin, who was on the verge of returning to the Russian presidency for a third term. And they were attacked by a Cossack militia as they tried to perform under a sign for the Sochi Olympics. The video is incredible. It is violent. Take a look at the beating they get. They're just whipped by the Cossacks.
Езжайте откуда приехали, Путин научит нас. Езжайте. Ослабли.
Путин научит тебя любить родину.
Езжайте, Путин научит нас любить родину. Стоять, понятно.
So there it is, horsewhips used by a Cossack militia against the punk group Pussy Riot. 6 group members donned their ski masks and they were pulling out guitars and microphones when at least 10 Cossacks and other security officials moved in. Pepper spray was used. They were whipped, masks ripped off. Police arrived. They questioned witnesses, but no one was arrested. Remember that the Cossacks, the horsewhipping Cossacks, are the same wonderful people who in years past conducted vicious anti-Jewish attacks and pogroms. We must not forget, Louis, that this is the same lovely group we're talking about.
Right. These are not the most open-minded people, and you got to hand it to Pussy Riot because they've been through a lot, and they keep fighting, they keep going at it, and it's admirable.
It's incredible. And if there is ever, to go back to our story about Kiev and Ukraine deciding between a stronger alignment with Russia and a stronger alignment with the European Union, aside from all the other economic and other geopolitical reasons to choose the EU over Russian alignment, this stuff is just not anything you want to be involved with at all and should even further that idea. George Zimmerman has come out of the woodwork. He was chased off of a Miami beach by an angry mob. He also wants his life back. He did an interview with Spanish language network Univision where he talked about all sorts of stuff. Here's just a little bit of George Zimmerman giving an interview in Spanish.
Cuando, después de que pasa todo eso, te das cuenta de que el joven al que le disparaste estaba muerto.
En la estación de policía.
¿Cómo se sentía George Zimmerman en ese momento?
Triste.
¿Está seguro de lo que hizo esa noche?
100%.
¿Piensa que fue lo correcto?
En mi mente y entre Dios y yo creo que se va a quedar eso, pero yo sé que si yo no actúe de la manera en que yo actué, yo no estaría aquí.
Aquí y ahora.
Yeah, he really wants to just have his normal life back. The thing is, most people who live normal lives didn't kill an unarmed teenager. That's just, it's not a normal thing to do. So to want a normal life after choosing to go out there and then confront an unarmed teenager, shoot him dead, and then be the subject of a trial that was international interest, that's not a normal circumstance. So you might not be able to have what you describe as a normal life after doing that.
Right. He just never should have murdered anyone.
Well, right. Trayvon Martin would want any life back, normal or otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to keep your normal life, just try not to murder anyone because that could change things.
The other thing is that he says he's a scapegoat for the government, the president, and the attorney general. I don't even know what that means. How is he being scapegoated? He was acquitted. I have no idea what he's talking about. And then it was reported that he had to flee a Miami beach after an angry crowd allegedly harassed him after recognizing him there. He was with his girlfriend, her child, and her brother. And beachgoers recognized him, and some people were supposedly shouting $10,000 bounty on George Zimmerman's head, and he eventually left. Yeah, that's not a normal life. Some people would argue in a normal circumstance, right now, George Zimmerman would actually be in prison, not on the beaches of Miami.
Right. Perhaps the most shocking thing of all is that he has a girlfriend, that someone wants to be this guy's girlfriend after everything they've read about.
Every time I read about George Zimmerman having a new girlfriend, I am truly shocked. Okay, let's take a break. Next, we will talk to Rebecca Watson, also known as the Skep Chick, and much more coming up, including your voicemails.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I'm joined today by Rebecca Watson. She is founder of the Skeptic blog and also co-hosts the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast, a fellow Massachusetts college graduate, BU. I went to grad school at Bentley University. I think BU and Bentley are rivals in some sport, but I didn't really pay attention, you know?
Possibly. BU has zero school pride, so I wouldn't be able to pick a rival out of a lineup.
So how did you first become involved in the skeptic movement, or how did you first start having skeptic leanings?
It was actually in college. I was working as a magician, and
obviously,
as one does, had to pay that big BU bill somehow. So yeah, I was a big fan of magicians like Penn and Teller and James the Amazing Randi. And it was through Randi, actually, that I really got involved. He is an escape artist, a magician who has for a long time now offered $1 million prize to anybody who can prove that they have paranormal abilities. And I was a big fan of his. He had a radio show. And
on YouTube, people also, there's an incredible video of James Randi and a guy who says he can move paper, I think it is, with his mind. And James Randi very quickly identifies that the guy's blowing on the paper, so he puts a bunch of styrofoam peanuts around the book, and the guy all of a sudden can't do it, and he's pointing to the lights and saying there's some kind of issue with the light or something like. It's an amazing video that people can look at.
Yeah, Randy's done a lot of great stuff like that because he has that magician's mind. And there's a big overlap between magicians and skeptics because, you know, there are so many people out there who are just using magic tricks to try to fool people and take their money. And that includes guys like that, or even psychics who are preying upon people who have lost loved ones and things like that. They just use magic tricks and they tell them that they have these amazing supernatural abilities. And it can be really awful in terms of taking people's money and also playing with their memories of their loved ones and with their emotions.
So if you were to now name the 3 or 4 most problematic areas where lack of critical thinking or falling for so-called magic, as the case may be, is leading to misinformed people and having a real effect, you know, I could think of climate change or on evolution or on whatever the case is. What are the 3 or 4 that you are most worried about right now?
Well, you've named 2 of my top ones, definitely. So-called politicized science, things like creationism creeping into schools, what happens with the Texas State Board of Ed constantly trying to sneak creationism in. And, you know, there are things happening right now in, God, where was it? Off the top of my head, I can't think of what state it is, but someone else has just introduced a new bill to force teachers to teach the controversy.
Oh, that's right. That's South Carolina, yeah, where they approved a lot of stuff for the new curriculum, except for the teaching of evolution as science.
Exactly. So that's a bad one. Climate change is a huge one because that's something that is currently having a death toll and is going to have more of one in the future.
What's interesting to me about the climate change one is that the problem is media driven in the sense that if people got their news from science, they would see that disproportionately there is a consensus on that issue. But when you get your news from, you have 2 talking heads, here's one person who says humans are a factor. Here's another person who says humans are not a factor in climate change. Hey, it sounds pretty balanced to me. I guess it's controversial.
Yeah, it's the problem of false balance. And we see it not just with climate change, but with pretty much any skeptical topic. Another huge one that we focus on at Skeptic is vaccine denial.
Right.
And that's another one where you see these articles about vaccines, and they present this idea that on one side, there are people who believe vaccines are safe and effective. And on the other equal side, there are people who believe that they're dangerous and cause autism. Those sides are not equal. All of the evidence we have shows us that vaccines are safe and effective and for the better good of society. And there's a very small but vocal group of mostly scientifically ignorant people who are arguing that vaccines cause autism. There's absolutely nothing to suggest that that is true.
Now, obviously, you could have only come to that conclusion because the government has told you that that's the message you're supposed to be on, and they're probably even paying you to be part of the establishment.
Yeah, apparently I get quite a big paycheck from Big Pharma, which is news to me because Big Pharma is something that I have fought viciously in the past. I used to be an activist working to improve Medicare to include prescription medication, and lobbyists from Big Pharma were exactly who I was fighting. But fast forward a few years and I'm being accused of being in Big Pharma's pocket. And that is one of the problems of presenting this kind of false dilemma. It's like, well, you're either on Big Pharma's side or you're on the little guy's side. But you look at most alternative medicine out there, this is being produced by Big Pharma. The people who are making millions of dollars off of alternative medicine aren't trying to, they don't have some hope for humanity that the evil Big Pharma company doesn't have. They are the Big Pharma company. Those
So
companies
you've kind of opened the door now to me asking about homeopathy. We had a little segment a couple weeks ago where I said, what are some of the biggest scams we know of? And my producer and I discussed it. And by scams, we mean something that's legal but is either deceptive, or it's not what it is, or it's a way for people to take your money. And I listed in a long list of things homeopathy, saying when you actually look at active ingredients in homeopathy, there's almost nothing there. It's like diluting a teaspoon of salt in a big swimming pool or even more. And that James Randi took a whole bottle of some kind of homeopathic sleeping medicine, and he not only didn't feel sleepy, he should have been in the hospital if it were true how effective it was. So I got a bunch of flack for this, saying, David, homeopathy helped me and it has helped others. I'm thinking of the placebo effect, but what do you know about this supposed controversy over homeopathy?
Well, you're absolutely right. A lot of people confuse homeopathy with naturopathy. So that's one thing to get out of the way at the start. What homeopathy is literally nothing. A sugar pill, some water. There's the definition of homeopathy is that there is no active ingredient. There are basically two rules to homeopathy. One is that the more you dilute something, the stronger it gets.
Well, let's think about that one. When I heard that, I said, how is it that all of the basic fundamentals of science and where else would it apply that the more you dilute something, it's stronger? Imagine if you put some salt in a dish, in a soup, for example, and then you double the amount of water and you say, well, how is that possibly going to make it saltier?
Right. Yeah, it makes zero sense. Any child should be able to debunk that one. And it's not even just diluting it. It's, what the example you gave of a spoon of salt in a swimming pool would be one of the weakest dilutions that homeopathy could offer, because their standard dilution is something like a single atom of a thing in all of the oceans on Earth. You will not get a bit of it. You are getting more fish poop in your water than you are getting any kind of homeopathic treatment. And that's just one rule. The other rule is the idea that like cures like. So, for instance, if you have poison ivy and it's very itchy, then you should find something else that makes you itchy and eat it. So,
for example, like if you have a soy allergy and you get poison ivy, you should have some soy to get rid of the poison ivy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Very minute bit of soy.
Right.
To the point where there is no actual soy in it. And, back when homeopathy was invented, it actually was pretty successful just because doctors at the time, medicine at the time was, using leeches and things like that. So not treating a minor illness was actually better than going and getting it treated. So by taking sugar pills instead of going and getting leached, you could do a lot better for yourself.
I would assume combining the non-destructive effect of the sugar pills with possible placebo effect, you're going to do okay.
Yeah, the other thing is the placebo effect, which is a really fascinating topic and one that I recommend people read up on, because every time you think you understand the placebo effect, you find something else out about it that makes it even weirder and more amazing. But yeah, the placebo effect can account for quite a number of people who take alternative medicines and seem to get better, and sometimes even actually do get better.
All right, we've been speaking with Rebecca Watson, founder of the Skeptic blog, also co-host of the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast. Great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. Great to talk to you too.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Several months ago, we told you about the Scheibel family who had a second child after having one child die because they chose to pray for the child instead of seeking actual medical treatment. A second child died and they were arrested. They have now been sentenced. The faith-healing couple was sentenced yesterday to 3.5 to 7 years in prison in the death of a second child who never saw a doctor despite having pneumonia. Herbert and Catherine Scheibel defied a court order, which already told them if your other child gets sick, you have to get actual medical care. That was an order that was issued in 2009 after their 2-year-old son Kent died. Instead, they tried to pray over 8-month-old Brandon last year, as he also died of a completely treatable case of pneumonia. Catherine Scheibel, who's 44, said, "My religious beliefs are that you should pray and not have to use medicine, but because it is against the law, whatever sentence you give me, I will accept." The Scheibels are third-generation members of an insular Pentecostal community called the First Century Gospel Church in Northeast Philadelphia, where they also taught at the church school. They have 7 more children who hopefully are going to be removed from the incredible danger that is just being the son or daughter of Herbert and Catherine Scheibel. The judge said April of 2013 wasn't Brandon's time to die. You've killed 2 of your children, not God, not your church, not religious devotion, you. The judge is right, Lewis, but 3.5 to 7 years for the second kid that you effectively killed. Can we really say this was involuntary manslaughter when they already had the experience of what happens when you pray instead of go to a doctor?
Yeah, it's I don't know. That's a tough one for me. I mean, it's certainly at the very least involuntary manslaughter, but they did, just so everyone knows, they did lose custody of, I think, 6 of those 7 children, remaining children. Which is good. I mean, I hope that by the time they get out of prison, they are unable to have more children.
Yeah, the real frustrating thing is 3.5 to 7 years after the second kid that dies because you don't get the medical treatment because you pray for them instead, and we have nonviolent drug offenders doing 25 years in prison.
It's incredible. You know, I still believe that if there was no religion, if no one told them about the Bible or about God or that you could pray, I don't think this ever would have happened. There would be nothing to be confused about.
Edward Snowden's lawyer has been detained and interrogated in London. Firedog Lake is reporting about Jesselyn Raddock, who represents national security NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden and has spoken on his behalf numerous times, was detained while going through customs at Heathrow Airport in London. She told Firedog Lake that she was directed to a specific Heathrow border agent. He didn't seem interested in looking at her passport at all, but rather was interested in questioning her in a hostile manner. When she was asked why she was there, she said, "To see friends." "Who will you be seeing?" She said, "I'll be seeing a group called Sam Adams Associates." The agent wanted to know who's in that group, and she said, "Oh, it's people like Ray McGovern and Craig Murray, etc. I'm also part of the group." The question then was, "Where will you meet?" And she said, "Well, at the Ecuadorian embassy." The agent said, "With Julian Assange?" And she said, "Yes, indeed." And then she was asked, "Why have you gone to Russia several times in the last few months?" And she said, "I have a client there. That client is Edward Snowden, etc., etc." And then asked about Bradley Manning, now known as Chelsea Manning. And afterwards, she said, "I was horrified that this agent seemed to really just be interested in giving me a hard time, knew about Chelsea Manning, knew about Edward Snowden, knew about the Julian Assange and the Ecuadorian embassy. And the ACLU is getting involved and saying, you know, this is a complete overreach based on whether it's surveillance or knowledge of Miss Radek, but this is just absolutely a violation of any number of rights. Not any number, but the ACLU has several gripes with what was done here. And I understand that if this attorney was suspected of some kind of crime or some kind of involvement with breaking laws or whatever the case may be, then it would be justified to interrogate her about specific crimes she may have committed. But everyone is entitled to and deserves legal representation, and detaining someone for being the legal representative of someone who is wanted, in this case Edward Snowden, that is impeding the carriage of justice, and it is absolutely not acceptable. You are essentially saying, if merely by representing Edward Snowden you deserve this, you're saying that Edward Snowden actually doesn't really have a right to the best attorney he can get.
Yeah, it's just intimidation and thuggery. And to think that this is going to have any impact on her or Snowden or the situation is ridiculous. Of course, this is just going to make things worse for them.
We have a voicemail line, which you can call any time of day. The number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's a voicemail. Let's listen.
Hey, David. In regards to should we separate an artist's work from their personal life, yeah, totally. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Megadeth, and Dave Mustaine is a crazy, psycho, right-wing, gay-bashing weirdo, but he still makes great music, in my opinion. It's really hard to separate, for some people, to separate their art from their work.
Yeah.
And though I think that Woody Allen did some creepy things, he still has great movies. See you.
All right, so there's one view, which is it doesn't matter what artists or musicians or actors do in their personal lives. We separate that from what they do professionally, artistically. Not everybody agrees. Let's listen to one more voicemail here.
Hey, guys. Great show. Yesterday, you reported 26% of people don't know the Earth goes around the sun. Recently, a survey showed, and I'm not making this up, 26% identify themselves as Republicans.
Yeah.
Coincidence? I think not. The Earth going around the sun isn't in the Bible, so it can't be true. Thanks.
It is true that about 26% of voters identify as Republicans, but it was not the exact same 26% of respondents to that science survey who didn't know that the Earth orbited the sun. I think we're jumping ahead a little bit, Lewis.
Maybe, but it is kind of funny.
On today's bonus show, we will talk about a fracking-related gas explosion involving Chevron. Chevron decided to compensate the surrounding victims by giving them pizza. It was a large, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, it was a large. They would be crazy to offer personal-sized pizzas as compensation. We'll also talk about Islam banning Muslims from participating in that one-way trip to Mars. I'm really sure Muslims considering going to Mars are really worried about what Islam is saying they should and shouldn't do. Also, I will tell a couple of other stories from the last couple days, some funny anecdotes. How do you get the bonus show? It's very easy. You go to our website, davidpakman.com. You go to the bright orange membership banner on the left side of the website, and then you can sign up there. Not only do you get access to the world-famous bonus show, hosted and produced by producer Louis Motamedi, you get a commercial-free archive of our shows dating all the way back to 2005, and you can put a commercial-free podcast feed on your iPhone or Android. We will talk to you on the bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.